The baby monitor crackled at 11:47 p.m., and my world shifted forever. I was downstairs in my workshop, fixing the third broken door handle this month. Old houses demand constant attention, and our Victorian beast was no exception. The monitor sat on my workbench, volume low, just enough to catch Emma's cries if she woke. What I caught instead was my wife's voice drifting from the hallway upstairs. "He has no idea. He's too stupid to notice." I froze, screwdriver halfway to the stripped screw. Veda's laugh followed, soft and cruel. "Zane, seriously. The man fixes toilets for a living. You think he's going to figure out what we're doing?" My hands kept working on the handle while my brain processed this information. Zane. I knew that name. Zane Merrinor, the consultant at her fintech company. The guy she mentioned occasionally, always with that particular brightness in her voice that I'd been too stupid to notice. Until now. "He's probably down there right now," Veda continued, "playing with his little tools, thinking he's so handy. Meanwhile, I'm up here planning our weekend in the Hamptons." The Hamptons. She'd told me she was visiting her sister in Albany this weekend. I set down the screwdriver and listened harder. The monitor picked up everything. Our old house's quirky wiring meant the nursery unit somehow caught conversations from 3 different rooms upstairs. Usually, this was annoying. Tonight, it was enlightening. "What if he finds out?" A male voice. Zane, presumably. "Trust me, Brooks is about as observant as a brick wall. Last week I came home with a hickey on my neck and he asked if I'd burned myself with the curling iron." I remembered that conversation. I'd been genuinely concerned about the mark on her neck. Apparently, my concern had been misplaced. "Besides," Veda's voice grew fainter as she moved away from whatever room she was in. "Even if he suspected something, what's he going to do? He makes $38,000 a year maintaining a private school. I make 6 figures. Who do you think comes out ahead in a divorce?" The monitor went quiet, except for the soft static. I stared at it for a long moment, then picked up my screwdriver and finished fixing the handle. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. And for the first time in months, I felt completely awake. Veda thought I was stupid. She wasn't entirely wrong. I'd been oblivious to the signs. But she'd made one crucial miscalculation. She assumed stupid meant helpless. I'd been underestimated my entire life. Teachers, bosses, even my own parents had looked at my blue-collar career and assumed limited intelligence. What they missed was that I chose this work. I had a degree in electrical engineering, but I preferred working with my hands, solving problems, fixing things that others couldn't figure out. Now I had a new problem to solve. I climbed the stairs quietly. 32 years in this house had taught me which steps creaked. Veda was in our bedroom, door closed, voice muffled. I couldn't make out words, but her tone was animated, happy in a way she hadn't been with me in years. Emma's room was dark and peaceful. I checked her crib. Still sleeping, tiny fist curled near her face. 6 months old, and already the best thing in my life. Whatever happened next, I'd make sure she was protected. Back downstairs, I started what I would later call my silent catalog. I pulled out a notebook and began documenting everything I'd been too trusting to question before. Late-night showers after work events, check. New lingerie that I never saw her wear, check. Cash withdrawals from our joint account, small amounts but frequent. I pulled up our online banking. 200 here, 300 there, always from ATMs near her office, never explained. Her phone, which used to sit casually on counters and tables, now lived permanently in her purse or pocket. When it buzzed, she'd glance at it with a little smile that never included me. The working late had started 3 months ago. "Big project," she'd said. "Lots of overtime." Funny how someone in HR suddenly had so much overtime. I closed the notebook and sat back in my chair. The baby monitor crackled again, just static this time. Veda had probably finished her conversation and gone to bed. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and kiss my cheek and ask about my day, and I'd respond like the oblivious husband she thought I was. But tonight everything had changed. My phone buzzed. Text message from Isla Corvin, Veda's best friend since college. Isla was an art curator at the downtown gallery, sharp and observant in ways that had always made me slightly nervous. She noticed everything, remembered everything, and had a way of looking at people like she could see straight through their pretenses. Hi, Brooks. Hope you don't mind me texting so late. I wanted to ask about planning something special for Veda's birthday next month. Could we meet for dinner this week to discuss? I have some ideas I think you'll love. I stared at the message for a long moment. Veda's birthday was 6 weeks away, not next month. Isla knew this. She'd been at every birthday party for the past 5 years. This wasn't about party planning. I typed back, "That sounds great. How about Thursday at Romano's, 7 o'clock? Her response came immediately. "Perfect. See you then." I turned off the phone and headed upstairs. Veda was already asleep, or pretending to be. I brushed my teeth quietly and slipped into bed, careful not to disturb her. She stirred slightly. "How was your evening, honey?" "Productive," I said. "Fixed the door handle. Made some plans." "That's nice." She was already drifting back to sleep. I lay awake for a long time, listening to her breathe and thinking about Isla's message. Whatever was happening here, I wasn't the only one who'd noticed something wrong. The baby monitor on the nightstand stayed quiet, but I found myself watching it anyway. Technology was a funny thing. Sometimes it revealed more than you expected. Sometimes it showed you exactly what you needed to see. Tomorrow, I'd start paying closer attention. Tonight, I'd gotten my wake-up call. Veda was right about one thing. I was too stupid to notice. But I wasn't too stupid to learn. Romano's was crowded for a Thursday night, which suited me fine. Background noise would cover our conversation, and the dim lighting meant I could study Isla's face without seeming obvious about it. She was already seated when I arrived, nursing a glass of red wine and reading something on her phone. Isla had always been striking, tall, with dark hair that she wore in a way that suggested she'd just run her fingers through it, and green eyes that seemed to catalog everything around her. Tonight, she looked nervous. "Brooks." She stood to hug me, which was normal. What wasn't normal was how long she held on, or the way she squeezed my shoulder before letting go. "Thanks for meeting me." I sat across from her, noting that she'd chosen a corner table, backs to the wall, good view of the restaurant. "Of course. Though I have to admit, I'm curious about this party planning that can't wait until next month." She took a sip of wine, studying me over the rim of her glass. "You know, in all the years I've known you and Veda, I don't think we've ever had dinner alone. There's a first time for everything." "Indeed." She set down her glass. "Brooks, can I ask you something? And will you give me an honest answer?" "Shoot. How are things at home, really?" The question hung between us like smoke. I could have deflected, made small talk, pretended everything was fine. Instead, I found myself leaning forward. "Honestly, I'm starting to think my wife believes I'm an idiot." Isla's shoulders relaxed slightly. "What makes you say that?" I told her about the monitor, about Veda's conversation with Zane. I watched Isla's face carefully as I spoke, looking for surprise, shock, anything that suggested this was news to her. What I saw instead was relief. "Oh, thank God," she said when I finished. "I was wondering how to tell you. You knew." "I suspected, for months." She signaled the waiter for another wine. "Brooks, I need you to understand something. Veda is my oldest friend. We've been through everything together. But watching her treat you like you're invisible, like you're just some convenient fixture in her life, it's been making me sick." The waiter appeared. I ordered a beer and the first entree my eyes landed on. My appetite had vanished, but I needed something to do with my hands. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Known for certain?" 3 weeks. Suspected? Since Christmas?" "Christmas. 4 months ago." "What happened at Christmas?" The party at my gallery, remember? You were talking to that couple about their house renovation, explaining some electrical issue they were having. You were brilliant, patient, knowledgeable, funny, and I looked over at Veda, expecting to see her beaming with pride at her smart, capable husband. But she wasn't. She was rolling her eyes at Cleo from her office, making faces like you were embarrassing her, like your expertise was somehow beneath her. Isla's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. That's when I started paying attention. Our food arrived. I picked at my pasta while Isla continued. She started asking me to cover for her. Little things at first. If you called looking for her, I should say she was in the bathroom or stepped out for coffee. Then bigger things. She wanted me to post photos on social media that made it look like we were together when we weren't. Did you? At first. She's my friend, and I thought maybe she was planning some surprise for you or dealing with work stress. But then I saw them together. I set down my fork. Where? The Meridian Hotel bar, 2 weeks ago. I was there for a client meeting, and I saw them at a corner table. The way they were sitting, the way she was touching his arm, there was no question what was happening. Did she see you? No. I left through the back exit. Isla pushed her salad around her plate. Brooks, I've been losing sleep over this. I didn't know how to tell you, or even if I should. Veda's been my friend for 15 years, but what she's doing is wrong. And the way she talks about you. How does she talk about me? Isla hesitated. Like you're a child who needs managing. Like you're lucky to have her, and you should be grateful she puts up with your limitations. The words stung because they rang true. How many times had Veda explained things to me that I already understood? How often did she interrupt me in conversations or answer questions directed at me? There's something else, Isla said quietly. Last week, she asked me what I thought about the custody laws in this state. Hypothetically, of course. My hands tightened on my beer bottle. She's planning to leave me. I think she's planning to have her cake and eat it too. Keep you around for stability and childcare while she plays with Zane on the side. At least until she figures out which option benefits her more. We sat in silence for a moment. The restaurant buzzed around us, couples and families enjoying their evening, oblivious to the quiet destruction of my marriage happening at table 12. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Isla looked directly at me, those green eyes serious and sad. Because you deserve better. Because Emma deserves better. And because I've watched you for 5 years, and I know you're not the man Veda describes to people. What man do you think I am? Smart, observant, kind, patient to a fault, but not weak. She paused. The kind of man who notices when someone's hurting and tries to fix it. The kind who works 2 extra hours to make sure the school's heat works before the kids arrive on Monday morning. The kind who reads 3 books about infant sleep patterns because he wants to be a good father. I stared at her. How do you know about the sleep books? Because I pay attention, and because someone should. The check came. I reached for it, but Isla was faster. This was my idea, she said. Besides, I owe you an apology dinner. I should have said something sooner. Outside the restaurant, we stood awkwardly by our cars. The night was cool, spring finally settling into the city after a long winter. Brooks, can I ask you something else? Sure. What are you going to do? I thought about it. A week ago, I would have said I'd try to work things out, suggest counseling, fight for my marriage. Tonight, after hearing how my wife really saw me, after learning that her best friend had more respect for me than she did, the answer was different. I'm going to be smarter than she thinks I am. Isla smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her all evening. Good. And if you need help with that, you have my number. She got in her car and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with a head full of new information and something that felt almost like hope. At home, Veda was in the living room, laptop open, Emma sleeping in her arms. How was dinner with the guys? She asked without looking up. I'd told her I was meeting Mason and some other co-workers. Another small deception, but apparently I was learning. Informative, I said. How was your evening? Quiet. Emma was fussy earlier, but she settled down. Veda finally looked at me. You seem different. Good day at work? Getting better all the time. I took Emma upstairs and put her in her crib, then sat in the rocking chair for a few minutes, watching her sleep. The baby monitor glowed softly on the dresser, innocent and patient. Tomorrow, I'd start documenting everything more carefully. I'd begin building a case, protecting my interests, preparing for whatever came next. But tonight, I allowed myself one moment of satisfaction. Veda thought she was the smart one, the strategic one, the one in control. She was about to learn otherwise. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm of careful observation and quiet preparation. I became a student of my own life, documenting patterns I'd been blind to before. Veda worked late every Tuesday and Thursday, the same nights Zane posted photos from expensive restaurants on his social media. She'd started going to a new gym on Saturday mornings, one across town from our house, but conveniently close to his apartment complex. I knew this because I'd started following her. Not every time, and never obviously. Just often enough to confirm what I already suspected. Mason, the night security guard at school, had been a police officer for 20 years before retiring to our quiet campus. When I mentioned I was having marital difficulties and needed advice about protecting myself legally, he offered to help. Documentation is everything, he told me during one of our late-night conversations in his security office. Photos, times, locations. You want a paper trail that shows pattern and intent. Mason had a friend who did private investigation work. For $500, money I carefully withdrew from my personal account, not our joint one, I got a week's worth of professional surveillance. The photos were damning. Veda and Zane entering the Meridian Hotel at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Veda's car parked outside his apartment building for 3 hours on a Saturday morning. The two of them at a wine bar downtown, holding hands across the table like teenagers. But it was the audio that really convinced me I was doing the right thing. I'd gotten better at using the baby monitor to my advantage. Our old house's wiring was a maze of crossed signals and unexpected connections. With a little creative rewiring, my electrical engineering degree finally proving useful, I could pick up conversations from most of the upstairs rooms. He's getting suspicious, Veda said one Thursday night, voice coming through clearly from our bedroom. What makes you think so? Zane's voice was tinny through the phone speaker. He asked me about the gym membership, said he might want to join. So let him join. It's not that simple. Brooks isn't as oblivious as I thought. Yesterday, I caught him looking at our bank statements. Maybe it's time to tell him. Tell him what? That I'm leaving him for someone who makes 3 times his salary and doesn't smell like pipe cleaner at the end of the day? I was in the kitchen, ostensibly doing dishes, but really listening to my wife discuss my future like I was a piece of furniture to be disposed of. I'm not ready yet, Veda continued. I need to figure out the custody situation, make sure I get the house. Brooks might be blue-collar, but he's not stupid about money. He'll fight me if I'm not careful. What about Emma? What about her? I'm her mother. Courts favor mothers. Even mothers who are having affairs? There was a pause. That's why we need to be more careful, and that's why I need more time. I turned off the water and stood very still, listening. How much more time? Zane asked. A few months, maybe until the end of summer. I want to get my promotion confirmed, build up my savings account. Then I can afford a good lawyer. The conversation shifted to weekend plans. I stopped listening and started thinking. A few months. She was giving herself until the end of summer to destroy my life completely. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. She was literally planning my downfall while living in my house, sleeping in my bed, letting me take care of our daughter. But she'd made a crucial error. She'd given me a timeline. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Isla. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? I could use some advice. Her response came within minutes. Of course, my gallery, noon. The next day, I found myself in Isla's office, surrounded by photographs of abstract sculptures and local artists' work. She'd made real coffee, not the instant stuff, and the smell filled the small space with warmth. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, studying my face. "I've been busy." I told her about the private investigator, the photos, the overheard conversations. I watched her face grow sadder with each detail. "Brooks, I'm so sorry. I know this can't be easy to hear. Actually, it's a relief. For months I thought I was losing my mind. Veda would deny things I was sure had happened, explain away things that didn't make sense. Now I know I wasn't imagining it." Isla set down her coffee cup. "What's your next step?" "I need to see a lawyer. Start divorce proceedings before she does. But I also need to be smart about this. She thinks she's got months to plan. I want to be ready before she knows what hit her." "Do you need help with anything?" The question hung between us. I looked at Isla, really looked at her. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, but there was something in her eyes that made my pulse quicken. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Helping me, I mean. Veda's your best friend." "Was my best friend. There's a difference." Isla stood up and walked to the window overlooking the street. "Brooks, can I tell you something? And promise me you won't think I'm terrible for saying it." "Okay. I've been watching your marriage for 5 years, and for 5 years I've been wondering what would happen if you ever realized how remarkable you are." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Isla, let me finish. Veda sees you as safe, predictable, manageable. She has no idea that she's married to someone who can rewire a house, fix anything that's broken, remember every detail of every conversation. She doesn't know that you read philosophy books for fun, or that you can explain quantum physics to a 10-year-old, or that you notice when people are sad and go out of your way to make them feel better. How do you know all that?" She turned back to me, and I saw something in her expression that made my breath catch. "Because I pay attention. Because I've been paying attention for a very long time." The silence stretched between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. "Isla, I'm still married." "I know, and I'm not asking you to do anything about that right now. I'm just saying that when this is over, when you're free to make your own choices, I hope you remember that someone sees you clearly." I stood up, suddenly needing air. "I should go." "Of course." She walked me to the door. "Brooks, whatever you decide to do about Veda, whatever happens next, you're not alone in this." Outside, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Isla's words echoed in my head, mixing with the memory of Veda's voice calling me predictable, manageable, someone who smelled like pipe cleaner. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger or hurt. I felt possibility. That night, Veda came home late again, full of apologies about a work crisis that had kept her at the office. She kissed my cheek and asked about my day, and I gave her the same bland responses I'd been giving for weeks. But as I watched her interact with Emma, saw her check her phone 3 times during a 10-minute conversation, I realized something had shifted. I was no longer the hurt, confused husband trying to save his marriage. I was a man with a plan. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to tomorrow. 3 weeks later, Isla and I had fallen into our own routine. Coffee twice a week, always at her gallery, always under the pretense of planning Veda's birthday party. We'd developed an elaborate fiction about surprise guests and special venues, complete with fake vendor contacts and imaginary timelines. The real planning we were doing was much more practical. "I met with the lawyer yesterday," I told her over coffee on a rainy Tuesday morning. "He says I have a strong case for custody, especially with the documentation I've gathered." "How did that feel?" "Terrifying. Liberating. like jumping off a cliff but knowing you can fly. Isla smiled. That's very poetic for a maintenance supervisor. I contain multitudes. Yes, you do. She reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. Brooks, there's something I need to tell you. Veda called me yesterday. My stomach tightened. About what? She wanted to know if I'd noticed you acting differently lately. She said you seem distracted, secretive. She's starting to worry that you're having an affair. I almost laughed. The irony is incredible. It gets better. She asked me to keep an eye on you. Report back if I noticed anything suspicious. What did you tell her? That I'd be happy to help, and that if she was really concerned, maybe she should try talking to you directly instead of spying on you through your friends. How did she react to that? She got defensive, started talking about how hard she's been working, how stressed she is, how she needs support from the people who care about her. Isla's voice carried an edge. She made it all about her, like she always does. I sipped my coffee, thinking. She's getting nervous. The lawyer said that's common when someone realizes their spouse isn't as controllable as they thought. Speaking of control, I have an idea. It's a little devious. I'm listening. Isla pulled out her phone. What if we gave her something real to worry about? She showed me her screen, a draft Instagram post featuring the two of us at a downtown restaurant, heads close together, looking intimate. The caption read, "Sometimes the best conversations happen over good food and better company. Or new perspectives, surprising connections." When did you take this? Last week, when we were planning your strategy session. You were explaining the legal timeline and I was listening, but from this angle, it looks like something else entirely. I studied the photo. She was right. We looked like two people falling in love, not two conspirators planning a divorce. What's the goal? To make her sweat a little. She's been so confident that you're too devoted to ever look elsewhere. What if she suddenly wasn't sure? That's playing with fire. Maybe. But fire has a way of revealing what's really underneath. I thought about it. The idea was risky, but it also appealed to the part of me that was tired of being underestimated. Post it, I said. Isla's finger hovered over the share button. Are you sure? Once this is out there, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. She posted the photo. Within an hour, it had 12 likes and 3 comments, including one from Cleo, Veda's co-worker. Cute. Who's the mystery man? Isla had replied, just a friend helping me plan something special. That evening, Veda was waiting for me when I got home from work. She was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop closed, Emma playing in her bouncy seat nearby. How was your day? She asked, but her tone was different, sharper. Fine. Busy. How was yours? Interesting. I saw Isla's Instagram post. I opened the refrigerator, taking my time selecting a beer. Oh? What post? The one with you two at Romano's. You didn't mention having dinner with her. I turned around, keeping my expression neutral. It wasn't dinner. We grabbed a quick bite while discussing your party. Why? It just looked intimate. Intimate how? Veda gestured vaguely. The way you were sitting. The caption. People are asking questions. What kind of questions? Cleo wanted to know if you and Isla were dating. I laughed, making sure it sounded genuine. Dating? Isla? She's your best friend, Veda, and I'm your husband. Don't you think that would be a little weird? Of course it would be weird. That's why I'm asking. I sat down across from her, noting how she'd positioned herself between me and Emma. Veda, are you seriously asking me if I'm having an affair with Isla? I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying the photo looked like two people having a conversation, which is exactly what it was. I leaned back in my chair. But I have to say, it's interesting that your first assumption is infidelity. Is there something you want to tell me? For just a moment, her composure cracked. I saw panic flicker across her face before she recovered. Of course not. I just don't want people getting the wrong idea. What people? And what wrong idea? You know how gossip spreads. I have a reputation to maintain at work. Your reputation is based on what your husband does in his free time? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She stood up abruptly. Never mind. I'm being silly. I trust you. But she didn't trust me. I could see it in the way she watched me for the rest of the evening, how she checked her phone constantly, how she found excuses to bring up Isla's name and gauge my reaction. That night, the baby monitor picked up another conversation. She posted a photo of them together, Veda was saying. They looked cozy. Who posted a photo? Zane's voice. Isla, with Brooks. I think something might be going on. Would that be such a bad thing? If he's distracted, he's less likely to notice what we're doing. Or he could be building his own case. What if he's documenting my behavior the same way I'm planning to document his? There was a long pause. What kind of behavior? You know what kind. Veda, maybe we should cool things off for a while. If he's suspicious, no. I'm not putting my life on hold because Brooks suddenly grew a backbone. Her voice was sharp with frustration. I've worked too hard for this. I deserve better than spending the rest of my life married to someone who fixes other people's problems for a living. So what do you want to do? I want to speed up the timeline. I'm going to call my lawyer next week, start the paperwork. If Brooks is planning something, I need to get ahead of it. I smiled in the darkness. Isla's little psychological warfare had worked perfectly. Veda was now rushing toward exactly what I wanted her to do, but she thought it was her idea. The next morning I texted Isla, "Coffee today? I have news." Her response was immediate. Good news or bad news? The best kind, the kind where everything goes according to plan. When I told her about Veda's conversation with Zane, about the accelerated timeline and the lawyer consultation, Isla's eyes lit up. She's panicking. Completely. And panic makes people sloppy. What's your next move? I pulled out my phone and showed her a contact card. I'm calling my lawyer this afternoon. By the end of the week, I'll have divorce papers ready to file. When Veda makes her move, I'll be 3 steps ahead. Isla reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. For what? For not being the man she thinks you are. This time, when she touched my hand, I didn't pull away. We sat there for a moment, fingers intertwined, and I felt something shift between us. Something that had nothing to do with revenge or strategy, and everything to do with the way she looked at me like I was worth fighting for. Isla, I said quietly, I know. Not yet. She squeezed my hand once more, then let go. But someday. Someday, I agreed. Outside, spring was turning into summer, and everything was about to change. The call came on a Wednesday morning while I was replacing a broken window in the school library. Veda's lawyer wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss the dissolution of marriage and custody arrangements. I told him I'd need to check my calendar and get back to him. Then I called my own lawyer. She filed yesterday, Attorney Johnson confirmed, irreconcilable differences, requesting primary custody and spousal support. She's also claiming you've been emotionally distant and possibly unfaithful. Based on what evidence? A social media post, apparently, and testimony from friends about your recent behavior changes. I almost laughed. What about her behavior changes? That's where our documentation comes in handy. Are you ready to file your counter petition? Absolutely. Good. I'll have everything ready by Friday. And Brooks, based on what you've shown me, she's going to be very surprised by how this plays out. That evening, I found Veda in the nursery, rocking Emma to sleep. She looked up when I entered, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes: uncertainty. We need to talk, she said quietly. Okay. I filed for divorce today. I leaned against the doorframe, keeping my expression neutral. I see. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say? She stood up carefully, settling Emma in her crib before turning to face me. I expected you to be more upset, or angry, or something. Would that make you feel better? It would make you seem more human. As opposed to what? As opposed to whatever you've become lately. Distant, secretive, having cozy dinners with my best friend. I stepped into the room, noting how she backed up slightly. Veda, do you want to know why I'm not upset? Why? Because I've been expecting this for months. Her face went pale. What do you mean? I mean, I've known about Zane since March. I've known about the hotel visits, the fake work emergencies, the weekend trips that weren't to your sister's house. I kept my voice calm, conversational. I've been waiting for you to work up the courage to do what we both know you wanted to do. She sank into the rocking chair. How? Does it matter? The point is, I know. I've known for a long time. If you knew, why didn't you say anything? Because I was curious to see how far you'd go, how elaborate the lies would get, how long you'd keep pretending to care about our marriage while planning its destruction. Veda's hands were shaking. Brooks, I never meant for it to happen this way. Yes, you did. You meant for it to happen exactly this way. You wanted to be the victim, the wronged wife whose husband became distant and suspicious. You wanted me to be the bad guy, so you could justify what you've been doing. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, Veda, when you were planning to leave me for someone who makes 3 times my salary and doesn't smell like pipe cleaner, did you ever consider just being honest? Just saying you weren't happy and wanted out? Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Of course not. Because that would have made you the villain in your own story. Much easier to paint me as the neglectful husband who drove you into another man's arms. I walked to the crib and looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully despite the destruction happening around her. There's just one problem with your plan, I continued. What's that? You underestimated me. Again. I turned and walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Veda, you might want to call your lawyer back. Tell him to expect some additional documentation in the next few days. I think he'll find it very interesting. I left her sitting in the nursery and went downstairs to call Isla. How did she take it? Isla asked. About as well as expected. She's scared. Good. She should be. Isla, there's something I need to tell you. When this is all over, when the divorce is final and the custody arrangements are settled, I want to take you to dinner. A real dinner. Not coffee, not strategy sessions. A date. There was silence on the other end of the line. Isla? I'm here. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Then yes. Absolutely yes. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop for a long time, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects, thinking about the future. For the first time in months, it looked bright. Upstairs, the baby monitor crackled with Veda's voice, but I didn't listen. I'd heard enough of her lies to last a lifetime. Tomorrow, I'd file my counter-petition. Tomorrow, I'd start building the life I actually wanted instead of the one I'd settled for. Tonight, I was just going to sit in my workshop and enjoy the sound of silence. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late June. I arrived at the courthouse wearing my best suit, the one I'd bought for our wedding 6 years ago, and carrying a folder thick with documentation. Veda was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman who looked like she specialized in taking men apart piece by piece. They were huddled in conversation, occasionally glancing in my direction, with expressions I couldn't read. Ready for this? Attorney Johnson asked, settling beside me on the courtroom bench. More than ready. The judge was a stern-looking woman in her 60s who had a reputation for cutting through nonsense and focusing on facts. She reviewed both petitions silently for several minutes before looking up. This is an interesting case, she said. Mrs. Carvin, you're requesting primary custody based on claims that your husband has been emotionally distant and possibly unfaithful. Mr. Carvin, you're requesting primary custody based on documented evidence of your wife's extramarital affair. Let's start with you, Mrs. Carvin. Veda's lawyer presented their case efficiently. Character witnesses who testified that I'd seemed distracted and withdrawn in recent months. The Instagram photo of Isla and me, presented as evidence of inappropriate behavior, testimony about my blue-collar job and irregular hours. It was a competent performance, but it felt hollow. They were building a case on assumptions and implications, not facts. Then it was our turn. Attorney Johnson started with the private investigator's photos, hotel receipts, phone records showing hundreds of texts between Veda and Zane during work hours, bank statements showing cash withdrawals that coincided with their meetings, but the real bombshell was the audio. Your Honor, I'd like to present recordings made by my client using a baby monitor in his own home. These recordings capture Mrs. Carvin discussing her extramarital relationship and her plans to manipulate custody proceedings. Veda's face went white as her own voice filled the courtroom. He has no idea. He's too stupid to notice. Trust me, Brooks is about as observant as a brick wall. I make 6 figures. Who do you think comes out ahead in a divorce? The judge listened to 3 separate recordings, her expression growing more stern with each revelation. When the audio ended, the courtroom was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Mrs. Carvin, the judge said finally, do you dispute the authenticity of these recordings? Veda's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. No, Your Honor, Veda said quietly. And do you dispute that the voice on these recordings is yours? No, Your Honor. I see. The judge made several notes. Mr. Carvin, I'd like to hear from you directly. In your own words, tell me why you believe you should have primary custody of your daughter. I stood up, feeling calmer than I had in months. Your Honor, I love my daughter more than anything in this world. I've been her primary caregiver since birth. I handled night feedings, doctor appointments, and daily care while my wife worked late. I have a stable job with good benefits, and I can provide Emma with a consistent, loving home environment. What about the allegations regarding your relationship with Mrs. Corvin? Isla Corvin is a friend who helped me navigate a difficult situation. Our relationship has been entirely appropriate, though I hope it will become something more once my divorce is final. And your wife's relationship with Mr. Merrinor? That's between them, Your Honor. My concern is protecting my daughter from the instability and deception that have characterized my marriage. The judge nodded and made more notes. I'm going to take a brief recess to review all the evidence presented today. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. During the break, I called Isla from the courthouse hallway. How's it going? She asked. I think we won. The judge heard the recordings. She heard Veda call me too stupid to notice what was happening. And now? Now she knows exactly who was stupid in this marriage. When court reconvened, the judge's decision was swift and decisive. Based on the evidence presented, I'm awarding primary custody to Mr. Carvin. Mrs. Carvin will have supervised visitation every other weekend, with the possibility of expanded visitation after 6 months of consistent behavior. Mr. Carvin will retain the family home and primary custody of the minor child. Veda started crying. Her lawyer was already gathering papers, probably calculating how to minimize the damage in the divorce settlement. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm ordering Mrs. Carvin to pay child support in the amount of $800 per month, and I'm denying her request for spousal support based on her documented deception and infidelity. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Veda approached me while her lawyer made phone calls. Brooks, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am. I believe you. I never meant for things to get this ugly. Yes, you did. You just didn't expect to lose. She looked older than I'd ever seen her, defeated in a way that might have made me feel sorry for her a year ago. What happens now? She asked. Now you figure out your life, and I figure out mine. With Isla, maybe, that's up to her. Veda nodded slowly. She's lucky. You're a better man than I deserved. I know. She walked away without another word, and I watched her go without feeling anything except relief. That evening, I picked up Isla from her gallery. She was waiting outside, wearing a blue dress I'd never seen before, and a smile that made my heart race. "So," she said as I opened the car door for her, "where are we going for our first official date?" "Somewhere expensive. I can afford it now." She laughed. "Brooks Carvin, was that almost a joke about money?" "I contain multitudes." "Yes," she said, reaching over to take my hand as I started the car, "you certainly do." 6 months later, Emma said her first clear word while sitting in her high chair, Isla helping her with breakfast while I packed lunches for work. "Dada!" I looked up from making sandwiches to find both of them grinning at me. "Did you hear that?" Isla asked. "I heard it. She's smart just like her father. Smart enough to know who pays attention to her." The baby monitor on the counter stayed silent, carrying only the sounds of our new life, laughter, conversation, the gentle chaos of a family that actually functioned. Veda had been right about one thing. I was too stupid to notice. Until I wasn't. And now, watching Isla teach Emma to clap her hands while sunlight streamed through our kitchen windows, I realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be the person someone else thinks you are. Sometimes it's building something better from the wreckage they left behind. Sometimes it's just being happy. The monitor crackled softly, and Emma giggled, reaching for Isla's face with tiny, perfect fingers. "More," she said clearly. "More what, sweetheart?" Isla asked. Emma looked directly at me, those bright eyes full of trust and joy. "More, Dada." "You've got him, baby girl," Isla said, catching my eye across the kitchen. "You've got all of us." And for the first time in years, I believed that was enough.